Yesterday on this show, Tiki and Sean Morash were so confident we're about to go on a run. Here come the Giants. And here's the realization, no offense to Antonio. You better not lose that game on Sunday. That game is now a you can't lose Sunday if you're the New York Giants.
You're so conflicted. Aiden O'Connell, by the way, is starting as well. I'm getting old, Evan. You know why? Because this is my second teammate that's now a head coach, even though this is on an interim basis for Antonio Pierce. My second teammate.
Who's your other teammate?
Dan Campbell.
Oh, Dan Campbell, that's right.
Second teammate that's a head coach in the NFL. I'm getting old. But, it's interesting because obviously you're excited for my former teammate, Antonio Pierce, who won a Super Bowl, obviously, with the Giants, and then went out and coached high school football out in California. Then he was at Arizona. Then they had that recruiting thing, and, he ended up back in the NFL, and he's a head coach now. But you're excited because you like Antonio Pierce, and you champion him as a Giant champion. But at the same time, he is an interim head coach of a floundering Las Vegas Raiders squad that has now fired two head coaches. And, obviously the Gruden thing was separate. It was a different circumstance, but whatever. They've had two head coaches and now three with Antonio Pierce in the last basically year and a half. And so it feels like this is ripe for the picking.
Yes.
This is so easy for the Giants to rebound off of a ugly loss to the New York Jets. But at the same time, the pressure mounts because it's right for the picking.
Listen,
it makes it a must-win game in so many ways.
It is a can't-lose football game. I don't care that they're 3-5. I don't care about the talent that they have. I don't care about the fact that freaking Jeff Saturday won his first game coaching last year. You know who Jeff Saturday beat when he won his first and only game as an NFL head coach?
Who was that?
The Las Vegas Raiders. So let's keep that in perspective.
I did not remember that. And you have a young quarterback in Aiden O'Connell who's starting.
The truth is, I don't believe the Giants are going on any kind of run, but you kind of do. And Sean kind of does. Mm-hmm. And if you believe they're going to show any kind of pulse off a 2-6 start, when you go to Las Vegas on Sunday late afternoon against a brand new head coach who has no experience, against an offensive coordinator who I found out his claim to fame is that he worked for Adam Gase. That's their offensive coordinator. You better go into Las Vegas and not just beat this team's ass, but leave no doubt. Because this is now all set up, not for the Giants to go on a run. I still disagree with you guys. Mm-hmm. But it's at least set up for them to get a victory, get to 3-6. Everybody can feel good about themselves as the Giants start to slowly get healthy. So this news that broke last night, and there's a lot of aspects we'll get into as the show rolls on. Josh McDaniels being fired yet again, not completing his second full year. The fact that your teammate is now a brand new head coach. But the first thing is first. You better beat this team on Sunday now.
Here's the hard part about this. So as the Giants, you look just at yourself, right? Forget who the opponent is for 2 seconds. You look at yourself and you say, all right, Daniel Jones is healthy, at least healthy enough to be playing, and he's coming back. Saquon Barkley looks like himself again after 3 weeks of a high ankle sprain where he missed some time. Andrew Thomas is supposed to come back. The offensive line has stabilized itself with the addition of Justin Pugh, and it feels like, man, we're getting close to being what we thought we were going to be at the beginning of the season. The defense has taken this ridiculous leap over the last 3 weeks where they're averaging giving up less than 11 points a game. So it's ripe, right? This is exactly the situation you could hope for. But the challenge is that when you're on a team that fires its head coach, one of two things happens. Apathy sets in.
Right.
Guys are just like, all right, well, the guy who wanted me, Josh McDaniels, he's gone. I guess I better start thinking about what I'm going to do next year.
And they do have a lot of those guys. There's a lot of former Patriots on that roster.
There's a lot of guys who know they are gone because Josh McDaniels is gone, and apathy sets in, and it's just like, all right, we're just going to, as soon as we get hit in the mouth, when's vacation, right? You start thinking about that. Or it's the complete opposite, where guys start saying, I got to fight for my job. like all the laziness that we had before, the lack of a detail that we showed before, all that's got to go out the window, and I really have to dial in. And Antonio Pierce is a motivator. We've seen it in high school. We saw it in college. Even as a linebacker coach, he has a lot of respect. So they end up playing harder and better for the interim head coach because they're thinking about their jobs and their current jobs and staying here. So it's a very dangerous trap type situation because you don't know which team the Raiders are going to be. Are they going to be the messed up, mistake riddled, terrible play calling team that we've seen over the last, first couple of weeks of the season, or are they going to be a team that's highly motivated? Yeah, that's what makes it dangerous.
I think on the surface, it depends on the individual. I'm sure there are guys in that room who are just thrilled that Josh McDaniels is gone, who is just celebrating it, and they probably look at Antonio Pierce and say, I like Antonio. He's a relatable guy.
Former player.
I like Antonio. Then there may be others who are like, crap, the only reason I came to Vegas is because Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels kind of brought me here.
Yep.
One guy who I think is going to be motivated, one guy who I think is going to be pumped up is Davante Adams.
Yep.
Because he looked like a miserable human being last week when the Vegas Raiders played, actually just a couple of days ago when the Vegas Raiders played. But none of that should matter. If this football team is even competent, if the New York Giants are a competent football team, I'm not using the P word, not even saying a playoff team, but if they're competent, if they can at least build off of what they've done over the last 3 weeks, and you may say, well, what have they done the last 3 weeks? They've played 3 games in a row in which they really should have won all 3. They should have won the Buffalo game. They did win the Washington game. They should have beat my team. They didn't do any of it. And there was some execution issues down the stretch. The Buffalo game, some of the decisions that were made, a call that goes against you. We all know what happened in the Jet game. But defensively, they do look like a different team. They've given up 34 points over the last 3 weeks. You are now facing a rookie quarterback who's thrown the ball 45 times, basically, in his NFL career. You are facing a head coach that has never been a head coach in the NFL, has never been a head coach in college. He was a head coach in high school. There is no excuse.
Yeah.
Forget about going on a run and being a playoff team. I would question the competence of everything if you don't win this game. I'd question this head coach a lot more than I have if you don't win this game.
I think so much is going to depend on what it looks like. But in theory, from a high vantage point, I can't disagree with you. This feels must win. We almost felt like it was that way anyways, right? Before the firing of Josh McDaniels, simply because of how inconsistent the Raiders are. And if there was anything that they were going to do well, it wasn't stopping, offenses. I mean, the Detroit Lions just had their way with them, even though the score was closer than it probably should have been. The Detroit Lions just ran through the Raiders' defense. So you would expect that the Giants would at least have the ability to get right. But now, an elite defense that the Giants are hoping that they are becoming against a rookie quarterback who is, completing a pretty good percentage of his passes, but is nothing to write home about. You should dominate this game.
No doubt.
And if you don't, then we start questioning even defensively what we saw over the last couple of weeks. And the last thing I think is going to happen is that the Giants are going to be complacent, right? Because that would be the trap from we're playing a bad team that just fired its coach, but we're a good team. We can have a letdown game. I think that's the last thing on the Giants' mind is being that letdown team because they're just not good enough to be a letdown team.
Well, right now there's a fork in the road, okay? And there are 3 different ways this Giants season can go. Fork to the left. Well, I guess I could pick the right. I could pick any side. But let's just say fork to the left is Tiki's right for something he said yesterday, and even Sean is right for something he said yesterday, and that's the fact this season is not over. And the Giants are about to get hot. They're going to beat the Raiders. They're going to shock the Cowboys. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a season, like a real season. That's option number 1, fork in the road. You guys may believe that. I do not believe that.
What do you believe?
I don't believe that. I'll get to what I believe, but I certainly don't believe that. Tommy Lugauer's a big Giant fan. Doesn't believe that. I heard his bridge show. He don't believe that's happening. That's option number 1. Option number 2 is you show competence. Okay? You win a couple of games. This does not become a 2-15 season. This doesn't become a 3-14 season. But you show competence. You win a game here. You win a game there. Okay, not a good year, not the year we thought, but okay is what it is. Daboll's back for year 3. Then there's the third fork in the road.
He's back regardless, by the way.
I understand. Probably right. But then there's fork number 3. Fork number 3 is you lose this game to Antonio Pierce, you get embarrassed by the Cowboys, and bad becomes worse. And all of a sudden, the Giants are competing for the number 1 pick in this draft, which on the surface sounds great. It's the number 1 pick in the draft, but it means you're losing a lot of football games that you should not lose. And all of a sudden, whether they do it or not is not my point, Tiki. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, many people are questioning the competence of this head coach. If this is a 3-win season, if this is a 2-win season, which means they don't win another game, whether you like it or not, whether John Mara likes it or not, whether it's fair or not, by the way, that will be questioned. So there are 3 forks in the road. Playoff race, here we come. We'll win a couple of games and be, not totally embarrassing. Or this is about to get ugly. If you lose this game on Sunday to the Raiders, while I don't believe fork number 1's going to happen, at least it puts it in play.
Yep.
If you lose, fork number 3 is the reality, which means this season is about to become an epic embarrassment. If you're 2-7 and you lose to Antonio Pierce and O'Connell, what's his first name? Aiden O'Connell. And don't tell me what he did at Purdue. It doesn't matter. If you lose to Aiden O'Connell and Antonio Pierce, it's going to be fork number 3, and we're going to have a lot of very uncomfortable conversations over the next few months.
Yeah, because then you're staring at 2-8 with the Dallas going down to Dallas for that game in week 9 or week 10. So look, here's the reality though. The Giants can't afford to even think about what we're talking about. The team can't think forward. Oh, we got this guy, this team, this thing, XYZ. This was going to happen at the end of November. All they have to do and all they need to be doing right now is focusing on the Las Vegas Raiders and why and how they can beat them. Because, look, the Raiders are sitting – they're sitting in a position that's unenviable. You fire your head coach midway through the season. You hire an interim in Antonio Pierce, who, as you mentioned, Ev, and you're so dead on about this, he's never even, I don't think, been considered – for a head coaching job in the NFL or in college even. And yet here he is taking on this role that has a massive responsibility, including in game management, decisions about, play calling, defensively, offensively, whatever it may be. And you're taking on the defending coach of the year, right? This is where Brian Daboll needs to show his wares for what the award that he won a year ago. That is, I'm going to out-coach you, Antonio Pierce. And if he doesn't, and he gets outplayed, and the players don't have the right motivation or they make mistakes, that's when we start saying, man, this season is lost. Maybe you're not putting it all on the head coach, but some of it certainly is going to fall on Brian Daboll's head.
This is the game where if you lose, things get very, very, very ugly. They haven't fully gotten ugly around here yet, but losing to Antonio Pierce and the Las Vegas Raiders, it gets ugly.
Would it have been ugly if they lost to Josh McDaniels and the Las Vegas Raiders?
Not as much, believe it or not. To me, not as much. I mean, it would have been bad.
Yeah.
It would have eliminated any opportunity to go on any kind of run. But the Raiders, shockingly enough, have won 3 games this year, which is still kind of tough to believe. But they are a 3-5 team. They've got a better record than the Giants.
Yeah,
but
they
I
beat
think
the Broncos, they beat the Packers, and they beat the Patriots.
Yeah. I think once you make this kind
out
of
who they beat, though.
I understand. Hey, look, they still won 3 football games in the National Football League.
True, it's more than the Giants have won.
But I do think that once you make this coaching decision and all of a sudden you hire somebody, I don't mean any ill will towards Antonio Pierce, outside of his game against the Jets next week, I hope he's successful. I mean, selfishly, I hope he's successful. When you play the Dolphins, I hope you're successful. When you play the Chiefs, I hope you're successful. When you play the Chargers, I hope you're successful. But yeah, I do think that this kind of change does put even more pressure on the Giants to win this game. Right, Sean?
Yeah, there's no question it does, because we've made excuses. Whether it was last week, the coin toss, the not throwing the football, the kick, the 4th down, Buffalo, should it have been Tyrod Taylor that knew that situation? We've excused away a lot of the Brian Daboll questions this year as Giant fans because we love Daboll and we don't want to see another turnover. but you become the footprint of embarrassment if you lose this game to Antonio Pierce. It's no disrespect to him, because kind of like Josh McDaniels was embarrassing for losing to Jeff Saturday. And if you look at all of the interim coaches that made debuts before that, even Bisaccia lost his first game, John Fossil, Dan Campbell, all of these guys lose their first game because it is so hard to do. The Raiders were a laughing stock last year as a result of this spot. It will be hard for any of us hard and fast Daboll supporters to support him if he loses to Antonio Pierce.
I think we support him. I just think it wanes a little bit.
Oh, it wanes.
I think it wanes because I think I'll still believe at least that he's the right coach, that he can bring the right culture, that he can get this thing right when the health of his team is intact for more than 2 weeks in a row, and that the guys still believe in the message that he's preaching, and I still believe that they do. But losing games, and especially if it comes down to decisions like it did last week against the Jets, it's one thing to lose because, you know what, I don't know, Tay Banks gets beat on man coverage, and, oh, God, that sucks. He's a rookie. You can explain it. But if it comes down to, like, a decision, coach, we're going to go for this, are we going to punt this, we're going to kick the field goal, we're going to do an onside kick, or we're going to go for it on fourth down, whatever the decision is throughout the game, and that ultimately leads to a loss, that's when you start questioning the decision-making that we never would have questioned a year ago.
Absolutely. This game has become a can't-lose game for the Giants because Mark Davis woke up, or maybe he didn't wake up, maybe he was just partying, and made the decision. I'm blowing this whole thing up. Trying to become the New England Patriots of Las Vegas. Yeah, it didn't work. So Josh McDaniels
never works, by the way.
No kidding.
Never, ever works.
No kidding. So Josh McDaniels has accomplished something that I'm not sure many other guys have accomplished. And you can look this up. And you can try to find this.
How soon till he's back with the New England Patriots?
Like 6 days he'll be back.
As a consultant.
But Josh McDaniels has had 2 head coaching jobs, right? And usually if you fail at 2, you're probably done. You usually don't get a third.
100%.
Ask Pat Shurmur.
Mm-hmm.
But usually you get 2 jobs, you fail. All right, you go back to being a really good coordinator. Josh McDaniel has the indignity of being fired in the middle of a season, year 2, both times.
Yeah.
He was fired in the middle of year 2 with Denver. He has now been fired in the middle of year 2 with the Raiders. And I've always said this about a head coach. I remember saying this about Ben McAdoo, about Joe Judge, even though Joe Judge survived. It takes a special kind of awful to be fired before your second season has ever been finished.
Yeah, midway through it, too.
Midway through. Josh McDaniels has pulled off the impossible. He did it twice. Not once, but twice.
And he'll get hired again by Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, and somehow they'll turn it around and be a Super Bowl contender again.
No, they won't, because Tom Brady ain't walking through that door. We'll get your calls next at 877-337-6666. And the question on my mind, it's been on my mind since 4:30 a.m. when I saw the news that Antonio Pierce was going to become the head coach of the Vegas Raiders. Did any of his teammates, including Tiki, ever see this coming? Like when they were going to the bathroom right next to Antonio and talking about life, did you ever think to yourself, you know what, in a couple of decades, that guy's going to be a head coach? We'll find out the answer from one of his teammates. An exclusive conversation with former teammate Tiki Barber.